Right, good afternoon, everyone. Very warm welcome to today's live webinar. And we're thrilled to have you with us. It's now noon, and once again, we've got another dynamic and insightful session lined up for you today. I'm Neil Peterson. I'll be your host and moderator, and it's really a pleasure to guide you through our discussion on a topic that's always top of mind for anybody in property in South Africa. Our topic is expert strategies for property management. And joining me are three leading experts in the property management and tech space, who I'll be introducing to you very shortly. So today's webinar brought to you by REI, Real Estate Investor. Since 2007, we proudly served the South African industry in real estate, the independent platform for news, a news platform, investing insights, property education, and also through our award-winning monthly magazine, Real Estate Investor Mag, and our digital platform, rei.co.za, our regular live and virtual events just like this one. And we're really on a mission to empower you, whether you're an investor, a homeowner, a landlord, or a property professional, with all the knowledge that you need to succeed. So some quick reminders. If you've registered, don't worry, you will receive a link to the full webinar recording shortly after the event. And it'll also be available on our homepage, rei.co.za. And we want the session to be also as interactive as possible. So feel free to submit your questions anytime via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we'll get to as many questions as we can during the dedicated Q&A segment at the end. So whether you're a seasoned investor, a property professional, or landlord looking to optimize your portfolio, this session is designed to provide you with actionable insights and forward-thinking strategies. And if we've seen the property landscape continue to evolve, shaped by various market shifts, tenant expectations, rapid technological change, and really at the end for more effective property management. It's now become more critical than ever. So today we're going to explore trends, challenges, opportunities across the residential, commercial, and student accommodation sectors. We're also going to be looking at tech-driven property management, how digital tools and platforms are transforming operations. We'll look at market trends. We'll see how rental markets are shifting, what tenants are prioritizing. We'll look at how you can maximize returns in property, including student accommodation. We'll look at commercial versus residential property management, also regulatory compliance considerations. So throughout our session, our expert speakers will share their real-world experiences, practical advice, and really future-focused insights that will help you make informed decisions and stay ahead of the curve. So without further ado, let's get started. And I'm delighted to introduce you to our esteemed panel of experts, each bringing a wealth of experience and insight into today's discussion. First up, we have Jonathan Kohler. He's the CEO and founder of Lansdowne Property Group. And Jonathan has been a prominent figure in the property sector, known for his strategic approach and deep market knowledge. Welcome, Jonathan. Would you briefly like to introduce yourself?
Thanks very much, Neil. So just to introduce myself, I started out in the property sector probably around 2004. I was part of a leading Johannesburg property developer where I was part of the sort of sales and rentals team there. And that's sort of where I got my first sort of taste in the property market. Then shortly after, in 2006, I started Lansdowne Property Group in Johannesburg, subsequently grown the business from sort of a one-man business into a national property services business with 5 different offices nationally. And we do all sorts of different property services, from property management to estate management, sales and rentals, rental management, property insurance, property financial services, utilities management, solar, legal, etc., etc. So we've sort of branched out into about 10 different property services businesses now. And I've proudly founded and run the business for 18 years now. So thanks very much
Wonderful.
for having me, Neil.
That's great having you here, Jonathan. Wonderful. Good to hear how you've expanded into the different areas. So next we're joined by Rita van Rooyen. She's founder and CEO of My Student House, and she's also the author of the highly regarded book, Creating Wealth with Student Accommodation in South Africa. Rita, great to have you with us as well. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Neil. So I wasn't like a property person to begin with. I was really, I worked in a corporate company for 21 years, and then I left from there and I went into property. And I think, in the beginning, student accommodation was such a foreign concept, and so it's such a scary thing to do that it never really crossed my mind. But when I moved to Cape Town, and, the rental incomes here versus buying prices aren't that great. So I had to do student accommodation out of self-defense and get into that. And then from there, it just blew my mind in terms of what you can do with it, the social impact with the student themselves. And it just really fell in love with it, and started managing for myself, then for some of our investors. And now we're basically managing for anybody that want to get into student accommodation. So we only do student accommodation. We don't do any other kind of rentals or commercial or residential.
So if we look at the issue of compliance, and I think it was the FIC has said that the estate agency and the legal business are the biggest culprits in the grey listing, and which is quite strange. So, there's challenges for that, and maybe this is a can of worms we're opening. We could divert this entire discussion because Johan, I'm going to ask you, because you're managing now major communities, you managing rental portfolios. So you can almost, you've got a helicopter view of what's actually going on in property management. So what have you seen that has been those shifts in the last sort of, what is the big moves that have happened over the last 5 years, and how does it impact your operation as a tech provider?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I think just a clarification, I don't manage. People like Rita and Jonathan do the hard work. They manage. We provide the platforms for them to do it on. But I think there's really four things, and both has mentioned aspects of that. So the first thing, a complete regulatory evolution and a compliance pressure being put on the industry. So the implementation of the Property Practitioners Act came about, and with that, like you've just mentioned, the definition of a property practitioner also being an accountable institution today puts massive fiduciary duty on them. And you are right, attorneys and property practitioners as a whole has been nominated as the key culprits in creating the move away from grey listing. They weren't the only ones to get us there, but those are the two industries that's keeping us back to move. And so they've got a massive amount of compliance pressure that's been put on them as an industry. And it's I can say there's definitely no hesitation in the willingness of them to participate and help us to actually get away from it. But looking at their operations and the amount of acts they have to comply with, it is really a challenging environment that's been put on a property manager that really doesn't have massive margins. So I can say from a collective, the last 5 years, there's a massive professionalization of the industry. That I can say categorically. And the smaller guy is getting eaten up by the bigger guy, without a doubt. The scalability of the profitability on these small operations is just doesn't suffice the reason for being in that business. So bigger guys are eating the smaller guys. The bigger guys by far are running a more professional outfit. The two aspects that goes hand in hand with that is we've seen, especially from COVID, because that is, as we can remember, 5 years ago, there's a massive digital transformation and the concept of ecosystem thinking that the industry has adopted. They've realized that one of the biggest challenges is they've got all these departments that potentially was on some level of a system before, but it's created silos, massive inefficiencies, and they realize for their massive operations to be able to run effectively, they have to unlock every piece of efficiency that they can get, create efficiencies among departments kind of first, and then provide better efficiencies in communication and value out to their clients. So I've mentioned a couple of times, property management as the industry is not the most profitable. So you really have to run a good ship to really run a profitable business and scale effectively. Now, it doesn't mean someone running a rental portfolio of, let's say, 200 properties cannot be profitable. They absolutely can be, but they have to properly digitize and properly unlock efficiencies and value from their portfolio. And I think those are the key shifts we've seen from a global perspective as an industry. And that for us is really exciting because we really see ourselves as one of the key tools for clients like Rita and Jonathan to be able to create a more scalable operation that ultimately leads to profitability.
Okay, great. I think nicely said there, Jan. Do you want to add to that, Jonathan?
Neil, I agree with what Johan's saying a lot. I started my business with nothing, and we were the small guys for many, many years, and you beg, borrow, and steal in terms of like saying, like what business you accept, you sort of take things on and you're trying to build the scale. And as you said, Johan, it is a very difficult business to be profitable in. And I do agree, like we had a different property management software for our managing agent business. So the levy billing business. We had a different property management software for the estate management business. We had a different property management software for the rental management business. And to sort of get proper scale and to have sort of one ecosystem, I can just agree with Johan, so it helps to have everything on one platform. And, hearing Rita speaking about sort of the AI stuff to sort of make our lives easier, like it will be easier for me, for Johan to offer the AI solution. So I don't have to go and have another AI solution to type my minutes and another one using ChatGPT for something else, so it is good to have it under one platform. And just also touching on the FIC compliance. I was speaking to an agent the other day who actually doesn't work for Lansdowne, works for another agency, and he was just saying that in his area where he operates, it's the FIC compliance is sort of, he's losing so many deals because of the FIC compliance, that his firm is sort of instructing him to implement. And it's a good thing that it's happening, but there's just so much, specifically in the Gauteng area, there's so much money that comes from government type of business. And they've got a lot of money and a lot of cash money to invest in residential properties. But when you sort of asking where that money comes from, so it's sort of like a conundrum, because obviously, we should be responsible to make sure that the money that the person is investing into the property comes from a reliable source and they've paid tax on it, etc., etc. But there's so much business, specifically in Gauteng, that comes from that type of money that it's really, really hurting the property industry.
Wow. So that's probably the conundrum we have, and also what that FIC has, because with the whole FIC process is really trying to verify everybody and where the source of funds. They put a lot of emphasis on that. You get the likes of, Doc Fox, Encino, those guys that, spend time, and they're really trying to find out who are the guys that are laundering money and where that money comes from. Where's the source of that money? And it's a very important aspect. And hence the emphasis on, I would say, on compliance. Okay, so Rita, I want to bring in you. Thanks for raising that as well. And Jonathan, Rita, if we look at student accommodation, it's a little bit more tricky, isn't it? You've got seasonal occupancy, you've got NSFAS payment delays, you've got other general delinquencies and other problems. How does my student house maintain consistent occupancy and cash flow, more importantly, because we are talking about being profitable and all that kind of thing? How do you build and sustain strong relationships also with these tertiary institutions? And are they important to your success? So maybe just tell us how you can manage that throughout the year with all these variances you got in student accommodation.
Yeah. Where do I even start? Okay. At the beginning. So I think in terms of occupancy, at least these changes that NSFAS has brought in, especially in the TVET space, has helped us a lot. so we still have a lot of students that get defunded, or they had funding in the beginning of the year, and then for whatever reasons NSFAS realized, oh, they shouldn't have had funding and now they don't have anymore, and whatever the case may be. And then you end up with you're 100% full very early on in the year, and then as the first 3-4 months go by, you tend to get these different dropouts for whatever reason. Maybe they don't want to continue studying, or whatever the case may be. And then if you lose a student at that point in time, traditionally we would be now have an empty bed until the next year. Right. But what the TVET situation has done for us is that we can now, they've got trimester intakes and they've got semester intakes. So we do have another opportunity now in the middle of the year, or like in an April, September situation, where for the trimesters, where you can fill that bed again, and you can at least get income again for that. So that really has helped a lot. So when you choose your property, make sure that at least you're close to university and a TVET, just to be able to manage your occupancy, especially if you have a small property where you might have 8 or 5 people and you lose one. It's a big impact on you. So that definitely is the way that we can mitigate it. And obviously with TVETs there's other rules, because it's more like a 6 months lease, but there's various reasons why you would do one or the other, or both of them. Obviously we are dependent on the NSFAS payment dates, but at the same time it's also good to be in that pool, because it's the students that put pressure on the payments to be done. I've seen a lot of new communities, institutions, whatever you want to call them, of landlords in different regions and areas come together, and they're trying now to build like a super overarching association of all the associations, that to kind of, for private accommodation, to have that bargaining power, especially when it comes to payments and missed payments and late payments. And I've seen it now in April. They were supposed to pay at the end of March, the first payment, and then they announced, oh, sorry, we're only going to pay by the 4th of April, and there was such a huge outcry, and then they moved, I don't know what they did, but they moved the date back again to the 31st, so it was only 2 days late instead of a whole week late. So it's also good to be part of that process. So it's not like you're one person shouting for payments to be done. So at least there is that mass or bigger. Even then, your relationships with the TVET institutions and the university extremely critical. Of TVET students to him. He looks through it, he checks that all their statuses are correct, that all the other checks and balances are in place, that you can't generally just see, and a student might give you fraudulent documents. So they then check it for you, and they kind of pre-screen it for you. So by the time that you actually load it it's now with NSFAS for the payment, the chances are 99.9% that you're going to get that payment. Whereas where we don't have those relationships, then you tend to have more of either a delay in a payment because of a document that isn't right, or maybe some of the checks and then they drop out or they fall out and they have to vacate. But if you have that person in the financial aid office, you can kind of preempt all of those issues in advance before it gets to NSFAS, which helps a lot. I've also seen where people have been unnecessarily harsh on university officials, and sorry, you're going to get paid last. So don't fall into that boat. We're still a very people-focused industry, and it's about relationships, and and it's not about greasing the wheels or anything. It's really just about knowing and helping those guys, especially university and TVET officials, are under extreme pressure in the beginning of the year with student protests. I'm sure everybody has seen, I mean, social media has a month ago was like flooded with images at all the big universities of students protesting, and 90% of that is all about accommodation. So if you are there and you're able to assist and help them in those crisis times, it builds a lot of credibility and goodwill in that space for you then to make your life easier later on, especially when a student now, you might have a discipline issue with him, you might have to evict someone, or the students might complain about a transport issue, and now the university comes to you and you have that open door policy where you can explain, okay, but this is what I'm doing about this problem, and it's not just I'm now deducting money from you for whatever reason, or removing your accreditation. And so having those conversations and helping each other out and making the students happy, that's I think what the universities want us to do.
Excellent. A lot of balls to keep up in the air for student accommodation property management, but certainly I think that's also why you also take on board a number of property owners that do manage student accommodation. So it is one of your specialized sort of areas. Johan, I want to bring you in here. I mean, from your experience, what are the most common inefficiencies in traditional property management? I mean, if we look at WeConnect, your job is to solve these pain points. What specific challenges were you targeting when you created the platform, and how are you solving those pain points?
Well, thank you, Neil. I think it's a great question. I think to kind of define the problem, the past has been a fragmented environment, disconnected systems that creates profound amount of efficiencies as a global definition about the challenges that the property manager has. To summarize the 4 biggest challenges that we believe property managers are facing on a daily basis is number 1, compliancy. We spoke about the regulatory evolution of the last couple of years. Manageability is typically at the core. Property management is a financial service, but fortunately or unfortunately, there is a host of other services, operational stuff, maintenance management, area management, etc., that are coupled with that. So the question is, or the challenge is, how do you manage your core financial service with all the other operations and making sure there's profound efficiencies built into that, different teams, different roles. In scalability, we spoke about the profitability margins of property management. So unless you are properly scaling, you're really going to struggle to be profitable. So those are the 4 big challenges that we believe property managers face, if I can summarize them. And what we've set out to do is, first of all, we obviously in software, so everything that we've built through that lens. Are we addressing one of those 4 challenges? And kind of the way we solve it is, first of all, we built an ecosystem. We've already spoken about what we define by that and why we believe that is of critical importance. Secondly, we have the ability to create efficiencies through not only digitizing a process, but also to automate the process. We help through different departments, especially internally, to create transparency internally between departments, but also very effectively between clients and customers. Then, we really help. It's one of our things in business. So if you're managing 1,000 units in the community management space or 200 units in the rental space, managing your current business, how can we help you to unlock additional revenue in that business? Then the last 2 points, it's really, we believe its biggest opportunity for us is we need to help our customer to communicate their true value to their customer through proper reporting. I think, the property manager is completely undervalued. It is unfortunately also our problem as the industry that we didn't communicate our value well enough. If you're only communicating financial management performance, you're only getting value for that. But if you're doing all the other operations as well, you should be communicating that value to your customer on a daily basis to get paid for that value. And then lastly, as a whole, but specifically on the rental side, we really believe property managers are actually asset managers. Assets, property industry is one of the biggest assets globally. And ultimately, you are an asset manager. You should get paid for being an asset manager building and preserving and growing asset value for the customers. And as a whole, if we wake up in the morning, we look through that four lanes of those four big challenges, and there's kind of 6 points we have just mentioned. I think that is what we aim to do. And hopefully we build a user-friendly platform that ultimately saves our customers profound time, empowers them to build and scale their portfolios with confidence.
Yeah, thanks for that, Johan. I think you brought out some very important points there. And it's almost that you got to have those checklists with the software that takes you through that process that you can become good asset managers. So I think very good point there. Brings me to my next question. I'm going to bring you in here, Jonathan, because we've heard all the challenges now, both from tenants, collections, etc., and what their expectations are. But at the same time, we need to do the collections. So for you that's on the ground, what are your go-to strategies for balancing tenant satisfaction and at the same time keeping your returns here?
Yeah, I think going back to what Rita mentioned, I think people management and relation management is probably the key. I think it's the key to retaining great staff, and it's the key to retaining good tenants or good owners. And I think the biggest issue that we face in the industry is getting really quality staff, and then also, what Johan said is so true. Communicating your value as a property manager to people, because I think it's a very sort of undervalued role, and it is such a vital role. The correct budgeting, the correct maintenance for the end user sort of largest asset that they'll ever own. It's such a vital role. But communicating to tenants, communicating to clients successfully, in terms of how you manage the buildings, what value you're adding to them, how it will impact them, I think it makes a massive difference, because an unhappy client to us will always say there's not enough communication coming through. And if I'm sitting presenting to a developer or a board of trustees, for example, to try and get their business, the complaints are they're the same pretty much across the board, so they will, we obviously act very shocked when we hear the common problems from another managing agent who isn't performing. They'll say, and we'll act shocked and pretend that Lansdowne is not like that at all, like we completely perfect in our service, but the truth is we all battle with the same things. We all, they're saying the financial reporting, we're not getting financial reporting timeously, and it's not accurate. The service is not proactive, it's reactive. I'm emailing your staff and they're not getting back to me timeously. The AGM notice, the AGM is overdue, and we haven't had an AGM in 2 years, and we'll go, that's shocking, but that's shocking. That never happens at Lansdowne. But of course it does happen at Lansdowne. I think as you scale, one of the biggest difficulties is keeping your service the same that it was when you ran it, and scaling that effectively through the correct people and the correct technology, and putting the correct systems in place so that you can get sort of one standard throughout the entire organization. But you can have the best property management software in the world, but if you don't have the correct portfolio manager, a person, and that goes down to sort of like the core values of your business. We really trying to, when I started my business, the thought of having sort of a vision and core values, it seemed a little bit fluffy for me. I didn't really buy into it. But now, trying to sort of grow, our business is not the same when we had 10 people and we were trying to grow to 50, at 200 people, if you've got 40,000 units under management and you're trying to get it to 100,000 units under management, you're scaling a different business. And it's so important that your staff, and that's how we communicate the core values to them, that they're living the core values and they understand what the core values of Lansdowne are to them and to the client. I mean, what Johan was saying earlier on, Lansdowne vision is optimizing people's asset value. So it's to become the world's best property services company, optimizing our clients' asset value, which is the most important thing. So to go back to Rita's point, it really is it's communication with your staff. It's communication with your clients. And for me, it's relationships. We've lost business with good service and a poor relationship, and we've maintained business with poor service and a great relationship. So for us, it's relationship over systems, but if your systems are bad, you're going to lose the business anyway. So it's a culmination of both.
Absolutely. No, thanks for sharing that. Rita, I'm going to bring you in here because there seems to be a lot of questions for you, but please pop in your questions into the Q&A box. We've got time is running out fast because, but I think, Rita, where I want to bring you in is let's start looking ahead 2025 and beyond. And let's look at, and I think both Johan and I think Johan offers that within his system, but the human being behind it has to use it. So let's just talk. What are the things that we should be looking at going ahead? Let's talk about compliance, regulation, tenant behavior, financing, managing the agent, legal compliance. What's coming and how should we prepare? Because it seems to be getting more complex.
Yeah, I think it's it's very difficult to prepare when everything is really regulated by NSFAS, and it's almost like they change their things all the time. So it's almost like being prepared and having a change mindset in place. So just knowing that whatever today might not be like that tomorrow. And I think for me, it was kind of the hardest things to indoctrinate with my landlords. It's like, whatever I'm telling you today, I'm not lying. Tomorrow you might see a media statement that's different to what I'm telling you today. And it change overnight in terms of that. But in general, like I mentioned earlier, we definitely NSFAS's compliance and regulations and so on is definitely it's going to continue. They're going to get better at it. We're going to get audits throughout the year potentially coming in. So you can't have a good property on your accreditation day and 6 months later it's a dump and what happened and you think you're going to continue with your grading. So I think they're going to get better at it. So we need to be prepared to be responsive and maintain whatever it is that you had to have there on day one to get your accreditation. Mm-hmm. You need to still do that. Also, I think students, they kind of they want to also experience a student life environment, which I think a lot of private accommodation, especially smaller guys, have not really implemented or neglected over time. And students are expecting that they want to feel like a student, so they will leave your place, and for you to make sure that you still you can retain those tenants, because remember, when they sign up with you, they in their first year they potentially a client for you for 3 years. So how do you retain them? So there's still that type of expectations as well, and then definitely also in the facilities management AI space, I think there's a lot of things coming in there as well. We piloting AI software now because I want to know when these kids have a party before they have the party and the police gets called. So we now have AI software on the cameras so that and I remember working in my corporate job a few years back, it was all the rage that, Internet of Things and all of that, and this advanced warning camera system. And it was so far-fetched, and it was for these big corporations. Yet here we are now today, and it's available at a reasonable price for anybody to use. It reduces your cost for security and all other kinds of things like that. So, so I definitely think you need to keep yourself up to date on what's happening on that. And that will definitely continue throughout the next 5 years, I think.
Right. Okay, so Jan, I'm gonna ask you the final question before we take the group questions, and then we give everybody a chance just to wrap up. But I want to do it more in terms of the software, in terms of, where do you see property software headed in the next 3 to 5 years? What are the most exciting developments? We've spoken about AI, predictive analytics, smart integrations. What are the ones that are on your radar from a software perspective?
Yeah, it is an incredible, exciting, and intimidating space to currently work in, because at the pace that currently tech is developing. So we really believe the next 3 to 5 years that property management software will move away from purely being an operational enabler, but being truly intelligent. We've mentioned this words AI constantly, and it's enabling us, with the implementation of AI into our solutions and obviously proper databases, to really help you make AI like a co-pilot in the business, helping you more predictive analytics, more proactive management. So let's just, if I can summarize or phrase it in a couple of points: AI powered efficiency and professionalization and personalization. That I think is going to be profound move forward. Seamless integrations and proper end-to-end ecosystems. In the software game, with regards to integrations, we speak about APIs. And practically today, you can build your own ecosystem. But if it's not built together, designed together, it's just a separate plug, a couple of tools. So it's puzzles, but doesn't really fit together ideally. So I believe that there will be a vision of WeConnect to be the ultimate end-to-end ecosystem. So at the core functionality has to be in-house. And then we integrate with the likes of banks or payment solutions or communication platforms to make sure that we enable the property manager to have the ultimate point of contact, WeConnect, but are empowered with a proper ecosystem providing proper efficiencies. And then, I want to say intelligent dashboards, not only because today we pride ourselves providing intelligent dashboard, but what if AI as a co-pilot in helping you to manage your portfolio can actually help you intuitively to address the issue before it becomes the issue? It might be a non-compliant community. It might be, Jonathan mentioned, a community that doesn't have an AGM in 2 years. Those stuff should never be able to happen if the solutions are truly intuitively intelligent and helping you to manage better. So I see a phenomenal journey for us as a company, but also for the industry to even further professionalize, creating better efficiencies. But I think ultimately creating a better customer experience and actually getting valued for the value that these hardworking property managers provide on a daily basis. So I want to use the word professionalization with the help of tech, enabling really hardworking property managers to showcase, communicate, and report their value better.
Well, I saw both Jonathan and Rita, they were licking their lips as you were talking about that ideal system. And they said they can't wait till it happens. So absolutely. No, thanks for sharing that, Johan, because and it's critical to be able to do that. We've heard all the challenges. And also, we spoke about a lot of the solutions. What I want to do is just jump into, I can't believe where the times has disappeared. But Jonathan, I think let's just go to you. The question is from Anonymous: how to deal with levy collections proactively? Because I think you started out saying, well, the whole collection process has been an issue. So maybe how do you deal with it? I know 2 weeks ago we had an eviction specialist. She has a certain way of doing it. We've heard of people taking off front doors and, doing different switching off electricity, which are not very effective, which are not legal ways of doing things. But let's talk about how do you deal with levy collections proactively?
Yeah. So Neil, we have a big drive in our business at the moment where we're targeting sort of specific estates that are really struggling, with arrear levies. We're finding just the more action that you do, the more, like if you've got, if you're struggling financially, it's like your levies are the last thing that need to be paid. You'll pay your Edgar's furniture account before you pay your levy. You'll pay your bond before you pay your levy. So it's sort of like that last grudge purchase, but I find that the sort of creditor that shouts the loudest, we've literally got people in the office here, so we'll target a specific estate, and we've got people who just call homeowners every single day. They call them again and again and again and again. It really, really helps, because that person who's annoying you and putting you under pressure generally gets levies collected better. We've tried with with technology, there's gray areas for access control. You can sort of, we're doing access frustration on a couple of the developments that we manage, where, you can force residents to sign in, for example, if they haven't paid their levies. And even if it's an investor buy, their tenants are having to sort of sign in every single time they come in and out of the estate, or there's a limited amount of codes that can be sent to sort of give their visitors access. And we found that works quite well. And again, it depends. You can speak to a person who manages a building in Bromfontein and their collections are 100%. Because in Bromfontein, you can sort of operate sometimes in a more sort of, if you don't pay, the door won't get opened and you can't get access, and you can sort of just, it's almost like the slightly lower LSM or the very low LSM rental collection's really good, but the middle LSM levy collection and rental collection is really bad, because people know the act and they know the law, and they know that you can't just take the door off, and they know that you can't just turn off electricity. But to summarize, I really feel it's the amount of action, because there's one thing having automated debt collection fees that, where on paper either the managing agent is making money or the body corporate is making money, but on paper doesn't mean anything. You actually have to physically collect the cash. And my experience is, the more that you show action to the person who is not paying, SMSs, emails, phone calls, access frustration, the more you are in their face and they sort of know that this debt is not going away, the better the levy collection is.
Yeah, I think nicely clarified there. I'm going to ask Rita one more question, then I'm going to ask us to do a wrap up. I see Rita, Eugene actually asked, he's reaching out to you, and he wants to buy a student house in Boston, in Belleville, and he would like you to help you through the deal and obviously get indications of costs. And he wants to know, will there be another student accommodation masterclass, which I know there will be. We just have to get onto a date on that one, Rita. But yes, so this next question is for you. And it's from Nkanyiso, and she's asking, so for the student accommodation, the contract you enter into is with the university or NSFAS or the student. How does that pay for them? Can you maybe just explain where the relationship is directly, just to clarify?
So I think there are still, bigger guys. I'm talking thousands of beds or hundreds, kind of thing, that still have agreements with universities directly. But for us normal people, it is directly with the student. So whether the university, so NSFAS generally will pay the university, and the university will then pay the landlord, or NSFAS will pay you directly, but the landlord directly. But the lease agreement is basically between you and an individual student. It's that simple.
Okay, great stuff. No, thanks for clarifying that. Can't believe it. We've come to the hour. Can you believe it? I mean, this discussion is only starting to get exciting. We still got almost 50 odd people online, so they do want to hear the final take that each one of you've got. So first of all, we're going to start off Johan. Johan, do you want to maybe leave people with sort of a way forward? Maybe, what advice would you give someone looking to scale a property portfolio? And given that what we've heard today, and maybe leave something with somebody uplifting in terms of give them a way forward, leave them with something that they can take away and say, wow, what Johan said is great. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I think there's a massive opportunity lying ahead. If I look at our country from a demographic point of view, only about 16% of people can afford a home. So that categorically states, together with the economical factors we're in, the trends, as well as the Generation Z, I think we don't want to buy just rent. There's a massive demand for residential property in South Africa. So for any investor today, I think you have to get the right advice from a property manager like Rita or Jonathan to say where's the right area to buy to get the right returns, and also the type of investment I make. Do I just buy commercial because it sounds easier than managing a residential property? Or do I specialize like Rita and go into student housing? I think, you got to understand your strategy, but get good advice with property managers. But the point about the opportunity, it is massive in South Africa to provide good accommodation. And I believe if you invest right and you have the right professional partner, a property manager, to guide you through this process, the returns, long-term returns, is incredible. There's a good old fund manager in South Africa that speaks quite badly about property investment. And if you summarize property investment nationally, he's not quoting the wrong figures. But I can counter any of his arguments with double better figures, more predictable, lot lower risk. And the good old point is, if you understand the investment, you're going to make a better investment because you understand to manage the risk. I think, yes, to property managers, they understand the upside, but also the downside of property management. So partner with the right professional that guide you through this process. Yes, they do charge, but they do add significant value. And then on the community management side, I make the quote quite often, anything getting built these days has got a wall around it with a gate in front because of the demand for either sectional title or HOA estates. That's both residential and commercial. So the opportunity for property managers in South Africa to manage, I want to say, the start of the value chain, the community, is profound. So I just see opportunities. Yes, South Africa is known for all our challenges, but I think in that lies the actual opportunities for those guys that can build scalable, professional businesses. I think we're up for a fantastic ride going forward.
Wonderful. That's Jan van der Merwe, is the CEO and founder of We Connect You. And then, Jonathan, maybe you give us your advice if somebody wants to scale, given what we've had in our discussion today. I think there was some really good advice here from Johan and from your side as the property manager themselves. We've heard about those challenges, but what is your advice? Leave somebody with a great way forward.
Yeah, so it's quite funny that you mentioned that asset or fund manager, because he's actually I'm pretty sure he's a personal friend of mine. We always, whenever I'm posting on LinkedIn on an investment property, I'm sharing a Lansdowne thing, he private messaged me and says, please can I buy one bed, because I know that he'd never invest in residential property. So it's quite funny that you mentioned that. But yeah, listen, I think if you are hoping to get involved in the property management industry, sorry, I think I've just lost you. And yeah, you're back there. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking to get involved in the property management industry, like Johan said, the number one thing that it's going to take you, and this is from doing this for 18 years, is grit. It's not an industry to enter if you think it's going to be easy. Like when I started the business, I thought, I'll start this property management business. The great thing about property management businesses is that it's annuity income. Obviously, annuity is it's annuity if the service is good, but I thought I'd build this big business really, really quickly. To get to scale in the property management industry is extremely difficult. So if it's an industry that you think you're gonna start, you're gonna have 100,000 units, it's gonna be this massive annuity spinning business, you're definitely mistaken. But if you've got the grit to sort of be determined and build over time, it's an unbelievable business to get involved in. It's a business that people don't want to do. People don't want to do, the easier ways to make to make cash. If you, yeah, I mean, even myself, I sit back 18 years later, and I think maybe I should have started an asset management business. It would have been easier. I'd be dealing with people with money. I'd invest their money and make a couple of percent. Also, sort of annuity businesses. So that's for a guy wanting to start, in the property management business. I can't remember the stat now. I think there were sort of 69 or 70,000 sectional title schemes in the country. There's enough business for everybody. Um, and it's a very unsexy business, but when you've scaled it, it's extremely sexy. And I realized that specifically over COVID, where businesses were going under left, right, and center, and we didn't lose R1 in revenue. We obviously lost money on the sales and rental side, the state agency business. And then, so that's sort of for the property manager. I mean, if you're an investor looking in property, specifically residential property. I mean, we sell residential property nationally. You need to have a look at a couple of things. You obviously have to have a look at rental yield, which is obviously very important. And you have to have a look at capital appreciation. And over the past 10 to 15 years, there's been no capital appreciation in the residential market in Gauteng. And in the past sort of 10 to 15 years, there's been great capital appreciation in the Western Cape. And over the past couple of years, the capital appreciation in KZN has also sort of struggled and gone down to maybe 5% per year, depending on where you're buying. So you have to have a look at that. And then you also have to be careful, to start investing in the Western Cape at the top end of the market. Is it the top end of the market? Is it not? I mean, it's hard to say. It's definitely not the bottom. I'd say Johannesburg is a very, very good place to buy at the moment. I think it's bottomed out. I think Cape Town, you need to be careful. The Atlantic seaboard can't keep on going up and up and up and up for the rest of time, so I'd be careful about that. And then I'd also have a look at the Rand US dollar exchange rate. I think that's also very important, for the savvy investor who can just buy a Rand based US dollar hedged equity. That, if you have a look at the Rand versus the dollar, you've got 8% capital depreciation in Rand. It's losing 8% on average to the US dollar. So you're actually making zero. And that's why the capital appreciation is so important, because you need to try and get some capital appreciation there as well. So if you're looking to invest in property, I do believe in property, but know where you're buying, know the numbers, and always look at the sort of Rand dollar hedge and the ease of being able to get out of an equity versus being stuck in a property.
Great. That's Jonathan, CEO of Lansdowne Property Group, also the founder for 18 years in the business. Jonathan, you're looking very sprightly. You're looking sharp. So
the Botox.
Rita, would you give us your final parting shots before we sign out?
So I think for me, the biggest things that I've seen is that, people see this NSFAS cap and they're like, oh, we're going to get 52,000 rands per student in a property. And, they don't realize and they don't understand the expenses that is also mandated, or that has to be incurred by the landlord, and then they pay too much for their properties when they buy it. So it's very, very important. As hard as you're going to negotiate on a deal with, if you just had a normal tenant in it, you need to also negotiate with your student accommodation as hard. Right. I've seen too many people buying properties at exaggerated prices, thinking, oh, I'm accredited. Yeah, but it's not something that lasts. Is it, you were accredited 2 years ago? Is the property still in that condition? What does it actually mean? So that's the one thing. And the other thing also is that I would say that, know that student accommodation is a cash intensive business. It doesn't have there's 2 months of the year where you get no income, but you still have expenses. Then you actually have students in your place and you're still waiting for money. So you need to build up quite a lot, at least 6 months of cash in a savings account, to carry you through that time. And I've seen so many landlords, they just, they think, oh, I'm going to make all this huge amount of money and then they don't, and then they spend the money that they get and they don't save it. So, it's a really good investment. You can make a lot more money than you would in normal residential, but know your price is right that when you buy, and also know your expenses that you need to cater for. Because I've had to come in and assist so many landlords that ran into flow problems every single year. So know how to budget before you start your student accommodation business.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's Rita van Rooyen. She's the CEO and founder of My Student House and also the author of the book Creating Wealth in Student Accommodation. So, Flat, the story is 8. A huge thank you to our panelists, Rita, Johan, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your invaluable insights on today's webinar. And if you want to reach out to any one of us, please do. We've got your details. There's also an info email address. There's also a link below, which is in the chat box if you want to reach out, or reach out directly to We Connect You or to My Student House or to Landsound Property Group directly. And they will certainly help you out on any query that you might have going forward. And so I just want to remind you of our next upcoming events. We've got an event up in Johannesburg. In fact, I will be opening an auction with a presentation next Thursday in Johannesburg. So you're welcome to come along to the Bryanston Country Club, bid on a property, and at the same time listen to a presentation. So because of all the public holidays, our next webinar will not be back in our usual Thursday slot, but we're only coming back on Thursday, the 15th of May. We've got a slew of public holidays. We've got the Easter weekend coming up. So it's not to be missed, but it's in the chat box there where you can actually see where you can actually click on the link for our next webinar. So to our audience, and I know there's still a lot of you online, so thank you for hanging around. We went a little bit over time today, but I think it was quite important to share all that info. Shout out to you today. Thank you for joining us today. Your engagement has really made this session also valuable with all your questions, and we hope that you walk away with some actionable insights and fresh perspective. Once again, thank you very much to our panelists, Jonathan, Rita, and Johan. Wonderful having you. Until our next event, we wish you all the success in your property journeys. Happy investing and goodbye. Cheerio, everybody.